Welcome to Queer Lawyers Speak, hosted by LAGBAC, Chicago's LGBTQ plus bar association. My name is Adam Zeblian. I'm a partner at Schiller, DeCanto, and Fleck, where I practice family law, and I also happen to be the immediate past president of LAGBAC, Chicago's LGBTQ plus bar association. Today we have a very special guest, and all our guests are special, but this is a very special guest because she is my dear friend and mentor, and she also is a former board member of CAN TV.
Correct.
Judge Maryan Ahmed. Welcome, Judge.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
So why don't you introduce yourself, beyond what I already said, that you're awesome, to the audience.
Thank you, Adam, again, and I am so happy to be here. As Adam mentioned, I am a former board member for Chicago Access Network Television, so I have a special place in my heart for CAN TV and everything that it does for the community. I am an associate judge for the Circuit Court of Cook County. I presently preside in one of the civil divisions in the First Municipal Division, and I hear civil post-judgment cases at the Daly Center. Just initially, that's a little bit about me. I should say, in terms of my connection with LAGBAC, I am going to be an incoming board member for LAGBAC, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, you're technically already a board member.
Oh, okay, very good.
But we have our ceremony next week where you're getting, all the pomp and circumstance.
I get to raise my right hand and
exactly.
take my oath to become an official, as I say, a for real board member.
Now, you've also made history as the first ally board member. We've had other allies run for the board but have not won. You're the first ally board member.
It's such an honor, and I'm so pleased to be a part of the board.
And we're glad to have you because you bring a real breadth of experience because you're a former Chicago Bar Association president. Mm-hmm. You're a former dean, am I right?
Yes.
At a college.
Yes.
University dean. You're a former prosecutor.
Yes.
You're a former public defender.
Yes.
You're a former associate at a law firm.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, all that.
And now you're a judge. You're a former CAN TV host.
Yes.
And you're an artist.
Yes.
And a videographer.
Yes.
What else? What else are you, Judge Ahmed? I feel like there's a lot there already.
That's a good start.
Okay, and a mom.
And a mom, yes.
Now, your son, who's also in law school now.
Correct.
He had his own show on CAN TV.
He did. He had an exotic animal show. Yes.
Okay. Now, when he graduates, he's in school in the South. Is he planning on coming back and maybe starting the show again, or
not starting the show again? But he hopes to come back and practice law here in Chicago. He was born and raised in Chicago, and Chicago is near and dear to him just as it is to me. And so absent some opportunity, he's in Louisiana now for school, absent some opportunity there, I fully expect him to come back to Chicago.
Great. Well, maybe he'll want to practice family law.
Maybe. One never knows.
There's not many that
One
do.
never knows.
But you never know. So I want to talk about your life experience because you do have a fascinating path to where you are now.
Thank you.
You never really intended to go to law school.
Correct.
So you went to DePaul for undergrad.
No.
Oh, you went to graduate school. You went to law school.
I went to law school at DePaul.
Well, why don't you tell everyone your kind of path to where you're at now?
Okay. So I grew up in Ohio and went to undergraduate school in Pittsburgh. And I attended a women's college in Pittsburgh, Chatham College. When I was in college, I had to, like many of the folks who are watching this program had to support myself and pay for my own education. And so while I was going to school, I had a work-study job in college admissions. So my job was to take the families around and talk about the college.
Oh,
and
that's fun.
introduce the students to the college. And, you know, you and I are very similar. We have big personalities. And so it's the perfect job because you get paid to talk to people and to learn about them and to convince them to attend where you're going to school. So I did that for 4 years.
It's a little bit, there's a sales component.
Yes. And, you know,
lawyer, to be a good lawyer, you got to be a good salesman to a certain degree.
And you have to be able to tell a good story.
Yes.
And so when you're explaining a college or university to families, hopefully you're a good storyteller if your goal is to get them to come and matriculate there. So after my 4 years, I decided I would pursue employment in college admissions, and with an ultimate goal of becoming a university president. That is what I wanted to do. And so I moved to central Pennsylvania to a university called Bucknell University, and I worked there as an admissions officer. And while I was an assistant director of admissions there, Bucknell had what is called tuition remission. Tuition remission is where you work for an organization that pays for your tuition and allows you to attend school at no charge. And so Bucknell offered tuition remission to employees. So while I was there, I earned my master's degree in Shakespearean studies.
Really? Mm-hmm. I knew it was an art graduate degree. I didn't know it was Shakespearean studies.
Right. That was not an art degree. It's just a pure English master's.
Oh, okay.
But the focus was Shakespearean studies.
So you've read a lot of Shakespeare.
A lot. I adore Shakespeare. And so after 3 years of working at Bucknell, I took a position at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut as an assistant director of admissions and director of minority recruitment. So the charge there was to recruit and retain as many students of color as possible, you know, at this Ivy League institution. I was there for a year and then moved on to a university that was located in eastern Pennsylvania known as Albright College, which was in Reading, Pennsylvania. And then after a year there, I accepted an opportunity to come to Chicago to work as an assistant dean at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And so this, in terms of the arts,
that's where I'm getting the art part.
In.
Okay, yes. So you were a dean at an art school.
Correct.
Yeah.
So let me explain how I got the job at the School of the Art Institute. I grew up, again, I mentioned, you know, my family was very economically challenged. So if you wanted outfits and clothes, I had to make them. So I grew up sewing. And for me, sewing was like a way of life. Designing your clothes and sewing wasn't like an artistic thing or like, I want to be a fashion designer. No, it wasn't like that.
It was a utility thing.
Right. If you wanted something to wear, you had to make your clothes. And so from the time I can remember, I was making my clothes. Well, I made my suits for my interviews. And so when I showed up at the School of the Art Institute...
Wait, so you're a seamstress too? Like you're a fashion designer. Okay.
Well, I don't consider myself a fashion designer.
Okay.
It's more like what you said. I'm a utilitarian or a utility clothes maker.
Okay.
I was making clothes because if you wanted something, you had to make it.
Okay.
Okay.
You do wear nice clothes, though.
Thank you. But these
fashion.
aren't me. But back in the day, I used to have to make all my clothes. So I made this suit and wore it. And so I'm interviewing, right? And so before I showed up, because of my academic trajectory and my work trajectory, they thought they were going to get like a very conservative person. And so when I show up, I'm wearing a organza suit with that had like chiffon, matching headband, matching purse, and some other accessories I had made. So in the middle of the question and answer, one of the panelists said, "I have to ask, where did you get that suit?" And I said, "Oh, I made it." And so everybody starts flipping through my resume. He said, but your resume says nothing about you being a fashion designer. I said, oh, no, I'm not. I'm just somebody who makes my clothes.
And
And the rest is history.
right.
They called me back for a second interview. I'm wearing another suit. They're like, you made that? I'm like, yes, I did. They're like, we want you to become and be our dean. And that's how that happened.
Oh, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't history because then you had a pivot.
I did.
You left academia.
I did.
And how did that come about? How did law school even come into your mind?
So while I was at the School of the Art Institute, I was working at UIC part-time on a PhD in Victorian autobiographical literature. And at the time, I noticed in all of my classes, I was the only student of color. And I realized that if I continued along that trajectory, that one day, if I became a university president, not a president, a university professor, that I would likely not have any students of color because it was such an area that clearly other folks of color were not interested
Right.
in Victorian autobiographical literature, because if they were, they would have been in my classes.
Right.
And so I sort of had a crisis of conscience. So I was talking to the university, the Art Institute's lawyer about this, and he said, you know what, you need to be a lawyer. And he asked me, he said, how old are you? And I told him, 35. He's like, you're getting old. And if you're going to go to law school, you need to go now. You need to go to law school. And so it really changed my thought process. It just so happened that soon after, I took a job at DePaul University as special assistant to the president. DePaul also offered tuition remission, and DePaul had a law school. So when I started working at DePaul, I was able to go to law school full-time at night.
Oh,
I worked during the day and then went to law school at night. And by the time I graduated from law school, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer and a trial lawyer. So that's how that pivot occurred.
I see. And so you graduated from DePaul and you went to a law firm.
Correct.
Initially.
Correct.
Civil litigation.
Correct.
And then you became a public defender.
So when I graduated from law school, my specialization was intellectual property law, trademarks, copyrights, patents. I did commercial litigation, civil litigation, and then realized when I was going to federal court, I was seeing defendants coming out of the lockup in federal court in custody. And when I would see them come out the lockup, many of them looked like me. They were black and brown. And they would always look at me with this look of hope in their eyes, like, oh, are you my lawyer? And I felt terrible because clearly I wasn't there as their attorney. And so that made me want to volunteer for a not-for-profit here in Chicago called First Defense Legal Aid. First Defense allows lawyers to volunteer. They represent individuals at police stations at night, on holidays, on the weekends. I started volunteering to do that. And I realized as I was working at the law firm that my heart was leaning more and more toward helping people who were caught up in the criminal justice system. I also recognized that I had spent the early part of my career helping people get into college. And the question was always, where are students of color? Why aren't students of color in college? And I realized so many of them were caught up in the criminal justice system, and that I had a responsibility to help those individuals gain the same kind of opportunities that the other people that I had helped early in my career in higher education. And that caused that pivot toward criminal defense and ultimately the public defender's office.
Okay, so then how long were you at the public defender's office?
I was at the public defender's office for 3 years here at Cook County. I was based primarily the first 2 years at 26 in California, representing indigent in custody individuals. I was then moved to the Daily Center for the traffic call, helping regular folks who were caught up in the justice system for traffic cases. And it was at that time that I realized that I could have an even greater impact on folks who look like me if I became a prosecutor. Because prosecutors decide what charges to file. They decide what the nature of the charge will be. They decide whether or not they're going to persist in prosecution. They can make sentence recommendations. They are offense in the criminal justice system. And it is always better to be in an offensive position than a defensive position. And so that's the reason I joined the state's attorney's office.
So then you joined the state's attorney's office.
And then we met.
Yes, in Judge Lacey's courtroom. Mm-hmm. So how we met was I had a case when I was in financial crimes pending in your courtroom. And I walked in, and at the time I was really into working out. Mm-hmm. You can, not anymore, as you can tell, but
I disagree, but continue.
COVID hit me pretty hard. But Judge Ahmed, you were training and competing at the time. So I forgot to mention, you also were a bodybuilder. Mm-hmm. You still work out all the time, but you don't compete as a bodybuilder.
Correct.
But at the time you were competing.
Right.
And I would walk in and pick your brain when I was waiting for my case to be called. It was your courtroom, and I would say, what should I do this? And you taught me to drink tea because it hydrates you but gives you energy at the same time. Like, I remember it because you always had your tea in the courtroom.
Yes.
And so then that's how we became good friends. But then you got on the bench.
Right.
You left from Judge Lacey's courtroom to the bench.
Correct.
And that just kind of happened too, right?
It did.
And then you ran for judge. Mm-hmm. You did not win your election.
Correct.
But then you became president of the CBA.
Yes.
And then you became an associate judge.
So
Am I correct in the timeline?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
So I, when I did not prevail in my election, I returned to the state's attorney's office as a bureau chief.
That's right.
And so I oversaw the prosecutions in the juvenile justice and child protection divisions. So juvenile justice would be juveniles who are charged with criminal offenses, and child protection offenses are adults, usually parents, who are charged with abuse and neglect of children, parents, family members charged with abuse and neglect. So I supervised all of the prosecutors who handled those cases, and I did that for 5 years. And at the time, I ran for Chicago Bar Association president, ended up serving my term as Chicago Bar Association president, and then running for associate judge, being elected, and then coming back to the bench. And I came back to the bench in October of 2021.
So I want to hear, because I've heard it, but I want everyone else to hear.
Okay.
How it came about that you became such an ally to the LGBTQ plus community, and how that informed your decision to run for the board.
Okay. So I'm going to tell the genesis, and I don't know if you know this. I don't even know if you know this story. It's actually a personal story, but I will be candid and share it since you asked. So this would have been in 1995 when I worked at DePaul University. I was newly married, and at the time, one of my colleagues from DePaul lived in Boys Town. And he and I had been very good friends. We were colleagues at the School of the Art Institute, and he later became an associate dean for students at DePaul. And so as a newlywed, I went through marital disharmony. And so that disharmony resulted in me moving out of my house. And my colleague, his name was Greg McVarish, said, would you like a place to live? I have an extra room. Why don't you come and live with me? And I was like, of course. And he was a member of the LGBTQ plus community and lived in Boys Town and had me move to Boys Town with him. And so for the entire summer, I lived his life. I mean, his friends were my friends, his activities were my activities, and it was one of the best summers, if not the best summer of my life, the best time of my life.
And this was what year?
This was 1995.
Wow.
1995. And I mean,
Things were much different in 1995, even in Chicago,
I can
for LGBTQ folks.
I mean, day in and day out, we would go to work, come home, we'd go to the clubs.
Yeah.
We would be at the clubs. The sun would be coming up, and we'd say, "Ooh, we better go home and shower and go to work." And it was like many days like that, and hearing their stories and their experiences, and just being welcome. And I had grown up in a family that was very religiously conservative, and so I didn't have a chance to have much of a social life growing up. And it was the first time that I ever had a social life or just really experienced another community. And it just transformed me. And ever since then.
You've been an honorary member of our community ever since then.
And whatever I can do to make life better for the LGBTQ plus community, I want to do that. Because of how I was treated, the way I was received. Also, I have family members who belong to the community, and I want them to have a wonderful life and wonderful opportunities and be treated with love and respect. And if I can be one of the people that makes that happen, then I want to do that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I knew part of it. I did know you lived in Boys Town for a little bit because Judge Ahmed and I and other friends will meet up and peruse the bars, but we're usually gone by about 10 p.m. The sun's not coming up.
I was a little younger then.
So, Judge, what type of advice or what advice would you have for people watching this? I mean, you had an untraditional, is that a word? Different. It's been a long day of getting to where you're at now. You weren't a traditional law student in the sense you went to college, then went to law school, got a job. And so there may be people watching this program that are considering going to law school that tend to be older. What advice would you have to give?
I'm going to give some advice that one of the main partners in the first law firm where I worked told me. You know this individual, Judge Thomas Mulroy. Judge Thomas Mulroy was the partner who hired me at my first law firm out of law school. And he told me very early in my career, follow your heart and do what your heart tells you to do. And because there's always a concern about income. I mentioned I left the law firm and worked for the public defender's office. That was like a substantial pay cut, right? At a time when I was a single parent. And he would say, don't worry about money. Because if you are doing what's in your heart and what you enjoy doing, the money will come. And that's what I would tell someone. We worry about so much. Always focus on what makes you happy, and the opportunities and the doors will come about. The opportunities will come about and the doors will open for you.
Follow that little voice, your gut.
Because the universe if the universe puts an idea in your head as to a desire for you to be something, it doesn't put that desire in you without giving you the capacity to fulfill it. That's what I'll be 62 in April.
You don't look it.
Thank you.
But I was going to say, when you were saying 1995, I was going to tell everyone she looks a lot younger than she actually is.
I'll be 62 in April, and that's what my life has taught me. My life experience has taught me that.
And it's your breadth of experience and the diversity that you bring with you that led to you getting on the bench in big part. It was a major part of you getting on the bench. And thank God you are, because we
Thank
need
you.
more judges like you, and everyone needs a mentor and friend like you, Judge.
Thank you,
thank you for
Adam.
being with us
You're
today.
my friend. Thank
And
you.
thank you for all joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.